Hey, Jamie here, and welcome to Module 2, Part 1, Beliefs. So in Module 2, we're really focusing on mindset transformation. And if I had to single out any specific module, I think in this program that's the most important part of the program, I'd say it's mindset. And the reason I say that is many people in their personal lives and in their professional careers, it's not that they can't do something, it's that they either won't or they don't believe in themselves, or they lack the confidence to try, or they're afraid to take a risk because they don't believe that they're good enough. So the mindset is single-handedly the most important thing because your mindset determines everything in your life, both personally and professionally. So in this first part, in beliefs, we're going to break down how are beliefs formed and conditioned, and really what are beliefs, understanding perspective, both subjective and objective realities, and then understanding what are limiting and empowering beliefs, what is having personal leverage, and how do you replace disempowering beliefs. So I love to start with a story, and the story is, once upon a time, there were two brothers who grew up together with an alcoholic father. They lived in the same house, went to the same school, and played the same sports. They grew up with the same parents, both had to do the same chores, went to the same church, they enjoyed the same hobbies, hanging out with the same friends, having fun the same way. However, one brother graduated and began improving his life. He went to college, started his career, and developed himself to become a successful professional with a wife and 3 kids. The other brother graduated and started deteriorating his life. He became an alcoholic, was fired repeatedly for drinking on the job, and lived alone. So the question is, what happened? What do you think happened to these two different brothers who grew up with essentially the exact same backgrounds? They had different beliefs. They had different mindsets. And in this example, the successful brother believed that my father was an alcoholic. Look at what it did to him. He had a miserable life, and I vowed to never drink because of it. The unsuccessful brother believed my father was an alcoholic. What choice did I have? That's how I grew up, and that's all I knew. So they had the same experiences, the same objective experiences, but how they took that experience, those reference points, and translated that into what it means for them, for their life, for their beliefs, was completely different. And that's the power of beliefs. Beliefs will shape your future, will shape your entire life. So your mindset is the most important thing in your life. And it's important to know that it's not something that you just wake up and have one day. It's something that, because when you're born, you don't know anything. You don't even have a sense of self-awareness. And so your mindset, it's something that's created, molded, conditioned, and strengthened over the period of our lives. So the way that you can think about your mind working is at the very, very top, at the deepest subconscious levels of your brain, you have purpose, beliefs, and values. And these are things that you can choose. A lot of people believe that, who I am and what I believe today is it's unchangeable, but that's not true. You weren't born with a sense of purpose. You weren't born with a sense of beliefs, and you weren't born with values. You were conditioned to believe things. You were conditioned to value things. And it was through growing up, primarily through childhood and through your environment, that you learned what to believe, what is good, what is bad, what is right, what is wrong, what is just, what is unjust, what's moral, what's immoral. And all these other beliefs and value systems that you have, you learned growing up. So as an example, how you can think about this flow down. So at the very top is purpose, beliefs, and values, which create our mindset, your mindset. And your mindset will determine what you focus on in life and what you think about. And your thoughts will tell you what something means. And that's the important part, because you could focus on and think about something, and from that thing that you're focusing on, take away and interpret it in an entirely different way than someone else. The meaning that something means to you could be entirely different than what it means to someone else. And that meaning is going to determine your emotions about it. If you're happy, if you're sad, if something is good, if it's bad. And also thinking about something is going to determine your logic about it, how you rationally think through something. So, and just as a super simple example, If you do not if you do not focus and think about a math problem, you're not going to solve the math problem. So in order to logically think through something, you still have to focus on and think about it. So our focus and our thoughts and what that means to us is going to determine how we feel about something, our emotions, as well as our logic, our rational thinking about the thing. And then those two, our emotions and our logic, then determine the behavior, the decisions, and the actions that we take in life. So our decisions will drive our behavior and our actions, and then our behavior and our actions consistently played out over a long period of time will determine our performance and our results in life. So everything in your life today, everything in our lives today are determined by our thoughts. They start with our mindset. And I love to share that who you are today, you're one giant aggregation of all of the thoughts that you previously had. So where you are today, you once thought about 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, or maybe even 5 years ago, or 10 years ago. Everything in life starts with thinking about something. You are your thoughts. And so where we are today is we have the ability to change how we think, to change our mindsets, to change our beliefs and our values, to determine our purpose. And by knowing that these are the three variables at the top, by consciously choosing these and conditioning these and changing these, we can change the course of our lives. But a lot of people don't know that they can do this, but you can. So as an example, quickly for how this diagram might work is, so oftentimes people face rejection in their personal lives, whether someone dumps them or if they're rejected to join a team or an organization or an award or something like that, or professionally. So maybe someone who interviews and doesn't get a job or isn't given an offer. So if they focus on and think about that rejection, they then, because they're focusing and thinking about it, their mind will tell them, or they'll think through, what does this mean? Does it mean I'm not good enough? Does it mean I suck? Does it mean I am completely worthless? I'm unworthy of being able to do this. I failed. I'm not good enough. I can't do it. If that's what it means, the emotions that person is going to feel is going to be so disempowering. It's going to be depression. It's going to be anxiety. It's going to be stress. It's going to be loneliness. It's going to be self-doubt. And then the logic is in their mind, they're just going to be beating themselves up over and over. I knew it. I knew I wasn't good enough. This always happens. See, I knew I shouldn't have tried. And they just keep justifying the fact that they're not good enough. And then it's a negative spiral continuously. And when they hit that, when something has a negative or a disempowering meaning, it turns your brain off. It turns your mind off. You stop thinking. You stop trying to think through, how can I improve this in the future? How can I get better? Instead, you sulk and you feel demotivated and your mind turns off. But let's say you were to face that rejection and instead you focus on and think about the rejection in a way that means, well, I didn't get it this time. And I'm disappointed, but I'm motivated to do it again. And I'm motivated to succeed again or succeed in the future. And because the emotions are empowering, which are I'm motivated to succeed, I'm motivated to try again, your brain will turn on. Your mind will turn on and you're going to be thinking through, all right, logically, what do I need to do? You're going to reflect on the past outcome, which was a bad outcome, and you're going to learn from it. You're going to think through it and say, all right, what didn't go my way and why? And that logic is then going to improve you because you're probably going to start focusing on personal development or reaching out for help or training harder or doing something, and that will change your behavior and your actions, which will, in the future, change your performance and results. That's how you change your life. That's how you turn your life around. Failure is not a one-time thing. Failure is choosing to give up, and you can't give up. So this flow has been played out in all of the most successful people in the world. So as an example, here's a photo, and quite a few people know who this man is. This is Jeff Bezos in 1993. So as a quick background, because a lot of people aren't familiar with Jeff Bezos' background, but so he was born in 1964, and his mother was only 17 years old, and she was a high school student, and his father was a bike shop owner. So when he was really young, his parents actually got divorced. I think he was about 4 years old. and his mother remarried, and his mother married Miguel Bezos, who was a Cuban immigrant. So Jeff Bezos grew up in a middle-class family. When he was in high school, he worked in McDonald's, but he did very well both in high school and college, and he went to Princeton in college. But the important thing is that his parents were always supported, and his parents always instilled in him the importance of education. And because of that, he believed in himself. He believed in his ability to learn and then take that learning and use it for good in the world. So he graduated valedictorian of his high school, and then he went on to be summa cum laude at Princeton. He then began his career in 1986 at a fintech telecommunications startup where he did very well. And then he was there for about 2 years, and then he went to go work for Bankers Trust for 2 years from 88 to 90, where he was a product manager. And then after that, he joined D.E. Shaw, which was a New York, it was a hedge fund in New York that had just been founded in 1988. And he was there for 4 years. But what he learned while he was at that hedge fund was, and based on his experience at the telecommunications startup, he believed that the internet was the future. He could see the future when other people couldn't, and he believed that that is where business will go. Other people didn't have such a deep-rooted belief in the internet yet. So his beliefs were diverging from most people's beliefs back then about the fastest growing technology. So in 93, this was when he started Amazon. That was his first office. His desk was 4 pieces of lumber with a door attached to the top of it. And the other reason I think this picture is so important is most people don't know what was going on in his head in this photo. And what was going on in his head was his parents believed so much in him and his idea that they had invested $300,000, which was the vast majority of their retirement savings. And Jeff had warned investors, other than his parents as well, that there was a 70% chance that Amazon would fail. And in his mind, what was going on was if he failed, he would wipe out his entire parents' retirement. And so in his mind, he firmly believed, 1, in himself, 2, the possibility of the business, because he did believe that, online book selling and taking advantage of the growth of the internet would be phenomenal opportunity. But then 2, his motivation was he could not let his parents down. It was unfathomable to him to destroy his parents' retirement. So if most people knew what was going on in his head and the motivation where he was in this position, I think most people would have bet on him. So, and then you have another incredible example. So do you know who these 2 young girls are? So you can see the tennis racket on the grass there. So this is Venus and Serena in 1999. So these 2, Venus and Serena, they were actually born in Saginaw, Michigan, but they moved to Compton when they were really young because of how tough Saginaw was. And their parents believed that Compton was going to be better, even though Compton was still a very, very tough area to grow up in. And they began playing when Venus was only 5 and Serena was 4. And they tell stories about playing tennis in the courts in Compton with gunshots and gang wars happening just outside the tennis courts. But the most important thing about both of their backgrounds, and the reason their accomplishments are so incredible, is it wasn't just one of them that was great or that became great. It was both of them. 2 sisters became the world's best tennis players. How did that happen? And it's beliefs. It started with mindset. So their father was their champion, their coach, and he encouraged them relentlessly. Anytime they faced defeat in a tennis match, or anytime that they strayed away from their belief in themselves as potential tennis players, he was there to coach and remind them that, look, just because you lost this game, it's not the end. It doesn't mean that you're bad. It just means, all right, what went wrong? How can you improve? And their father was absolutely invested in their success. So he actually moved the family to West Palm Beach, Florida, when Venus was 10 and Serena was 9, to attend a tennis academy. And there he coached them mentally, not only on their mental performance, self-belief, and focus on improving themselves, but he also trained them on blocking out racism, because that was one of the things that Venus and Serena both faced heavily in a primarily white-dominated tennis arena. And so when they were young, that was tough. And so he also coached them on the game. He coached them in tennis. And the last thing that I'll point out that a lot of people don't know was when Venus was in 10th grade and Serena was in 9th grade, their father actually started homeschooling them and took over all their coaching individually. So their father instilled, and as well as their mother too, their mother was a rock as well. So their parents instilled a really deep sense of self-belief, an unshakable work ethic, as well as an actual structured program for the personal development that was required for their tennis game. So I love these two, their stories. And then you have a third example. And so for this example, it's the little girl in the bottom left. And most people have not seen this photo before or have any idea who this girl is. But if you're familiar, it's Cheryl Sandberg. And so this is when she was a little girl in the 1970s, and she grew up in a Jewish family in North Miami Beach. So she was actually born in Washington, D.C., but when she was really young, her family moved to North Miami Beach, Florida. So she was born in '69 to a Jewish family. Her father was an ophthalmologist, which is an eye doctor, if you will, and her mother was a French professor at a local college. And most importantly her parents deeply believed in the importance of education as well as religion. And so she grew up with these beliefs deeply instilled within her. And when Cheryl was young, interestingly, her parents founded the South Florida Conference on Soviet Jewry. And what that meant was their home became a safe haven for Soviet Jews escaping anti-Semitism in Soviet Russia. And so from a young age, she was witnessing and experiencing these stories of people who had escaped horrible things in Soviet Russia, and hearing their stories of adversity and overcoming and taking risk in their lives for their families. And she had exposure to those intense beliefs and self-belief from the people that they were hosting in their safe haven home. And in terms of the education side, when Cheryl grew up, she was not popular in high school by any means, but she did graduate at 9th in her class, which is incredible to think that with her GPA, which was a 4.646 weighted GPA, she was only 9th in her class, but still she dominated her high school education. And then she went on to Harvard in 1987 and graduated in 91 as summa cum laude, as well as she was the top economics student in her class. And then later she returned to Harvard 2 years later in 1993 to get her MBA, and she graduated with the highest distinctions. So growing up, she grew up with a very deep sense of belief in education, personal development, overcoming adversity, taking risk, as well as standing up for yourself. So now the next example I have for you is this man who grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina, and that might give it away, but basketball star Michael Jordan. So Michael Jordan also grew up of little means. His father was an equipment supervisor, and his mother was a bank employee. But when he grew up, all while growing up, he was extremely competitive with his older brother, and his father was also very, very supportive of Michael's sports dreams. So he was never limited by his family. His family never said you can't do it. They always believed in him. So MJ's mother and his father were his rocks. They were the ones who supported him relentlessly while he was a kid, and they always stood by him and believed in him. And then when he entered high school, the next most influential person that helped craft and solidify Mike's mindset was his high school basketball coach. So a lot of people know that he didn't make the varsity basketball team his sophomore year. And the reason behind that was his coach had said that he had no commitment, no heart, and he wasn't yet at the level for the varsity team. And this devastated Michael because he had other friends who had made the team. And so for him, this was a huge embarrassment and a huge upset. And he talks about how when he got cut and he saw his name not on that list in the locker room, he went home, locked himself in his room, and cried for almost an entire day. And what happened next determined his life. He decided that he would not let that be the end. And he decided to work harder than he ever had before. And he also made an agreement with the high school coach that if he practiced, trained, and worked out every day during the summer between his sophomore and his junior year, that he'd let him on the team next year. And he did exactly that. He trained and practiced and worked out, lifted weights every single day that summer between his sophomore and his junior year. And he came back that junior year, and not only was he good, he was great. He dominated everybody in the league, and he became the best player his junior year. So his beliefs, his sense of commitment, he deeply attributes to his experiences when he was in high school, as well as to his parents. And then this next example is, I think, the most incredible example in terms of overcoming hardship, overcoming adversity, and beating all odds. And so this picture was from 1960, and as you can see, it looks impoverished, and it was. So this is Oprah. This is Oprah when she was only about 3 or 4 years old, and she was born in 1954 in rural Mississippi, out of wedlock. And Mississippi's a religious, especially back then, I mean, the South was a deeply religious area. And she was born out of wedlock to an 18-year-old teenage mother who was a housemaid and a father who was in the army and a coal miner. But when she was birthed by her mom couldn't take care of her. And so her mom actually sent Oprah to go live with her grandmother, who was extremely poor and lived rural. And there's actually accounts where Oprah talks about how when she was young, she grew up wearing potato sack dresses. That's how poor her grandmother was. But most interestingly was her grandma taught her how to read before she was 3 years old, which no one else her age in the area knew how to read. And she also religiously attended church. And so she grew up with firm church values from a young age. When Oprah was 6 years old, she was sent to go live with her mother, who at that time was old enough to actually take care of her. And she was sent to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where her mom was. However, when she was living with her mom in Wisconsin, she was sexually abused by her uncle, her cousin, and other family friends between the ages of 10 to 14 years old. And you can only imagine the mental scarring and what that would do to a young kid. And it was so bad that eventually when she hit 14 years old, she moved to live with her biological father, who was Vernon, and Vernon and Zelma, so Vernon was her biological father who had married a woman named Zelma, and they lived in Nashville, Tennessee. So when she was 14, she went to go live in Nashville. And Vernon was a force. And he and Zelma would not allow Oprah to go down a bad path. And so they taught her life lessons. They brought her back into church, where she, again, consistently attended church with those morals and those beliefs. But then Vernon deeply instilled in her the importance of education, the importance of reading again. And so she was actually required to go to the library every 2 weeks, choose 5 books, and then write book reports for him, for her father. It was not a part of school. He forced her to read book reports because he knew that through that reading, she would learn about other people's hardships. And she did. She read biographies, she read memoirs, she read nonfiction, and she read all these stories of people who had overcome horrible backgrounds and really tough pasts and how they became successful. And so her beliefs that she had instilled from 10 to 14, horrible negative beliefs about herself, her self-worth, why she's alive, she was able to destroy those limiting beliefs because she read stories of people who had similar horrible experiences and how they overcame them and how they became successful. And one of the other things that she consistently talks about was her father told her there's only 3 types of people in the world. And the 3 types are, the first person is one who makes things happen. The second person was one who watches things happen. And the third person is one who doesn't know what's happening. And Oprah always said that she wanted to be the type of person who made things happen. And she did, and she always has been since. So she learned that the bad things in her life didn't need to define her future, And it was the education and her beliefs and her sense of self-worth that she rebuilt from the ages 14 to 18. That's Oprah credits that to essentially saving her life. So these people, they had very tough backgrounds and they didn't start with a lot, but who they became is unbelievable. So Jeff Bezos is now, Jeff Bezos, most people are aware of who he is, the world's wealthiest man, and Amazon.com. And then you have both Venus and Serena, and both sisters have been ranked numerous times as the #1 female tennis players in the world. Serena has won 23 Grand Slam single titles, which is the most titles by any player in the Open era, which started in 1968. And she's also the second most all-time behind Margaret Court, Margaret Court only won one more, 24 titles. And then you have Venus as well, who's also been ranked #1 in the world multiple times. And she's won 7 Grand Slam single titles, and she's tied for 12th on the all-time list. And then Cheryl Sandberg. She's now, many people are familiar with her, but if you're not, she's the COO of Facebook. And Mark Zuckerberg actually hired her on when they were still a startup and not even profitable. And she's the one who really led the monetization of Facebook. When she first joined, Zuckerberg really was only focused on building a website that people loved. He didn't know how to make it profitable. Sheryl Sandberg was the one who really brought the business mind to Facebook. But also super importantly, she's the author of Lean In. And if you've read the book, if you're familiar with her work, she is a trailblazer for female empowerment and women in leadership. And she's transformed not only the tech industry, but she's set an example for women in leadership across all industries globally. And then you have Michael Jordan. And most people know his background, and if they don't know the extent of it, he achieved a level of success that had never before been seen in basketball. And he also is one of the best sports careers in sports history. So kind of the highlight was he won 3 national championships back-to-back with the Chicago Bulls and won 3 more national championships back-to-back after he had retired and then came back. So 3 back-to-back, retired, returned, and then won 3 more back-to-back. Unbelievable. And then you have Oprah. And she was the first black female billionaire, which she achieved in 2003. And the most important thing that she's achieved is she has shattered glass ceilings for millions of women and black people internationally. And I want you to focus on the photo in the middle. When this photo was taken, it changed beliefs for millions of people instantly. And the reason this photo is so powerful is, one, is Forbes, which is one of the most reputable magazines and publications in the world. And it's Oprah standing, a black woman standing in the middle of the 2 wealthiest white men in the world, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. So when people saw this picture, it instantly changed what they believed was possible. It shattered beliefs. And also that top photo on the left, Obama, similar story. When Obama became president, it instantly changed beliefs about what people believed was possible. Black people globally saw that as it's possible. It changed their beliefs about the ceiling, about what they could achieve in their life. So they set examples, and by doing so, they changed beliefs. So Oprah's won over 38 awards for her work. She's won 18 Daytime Emmy Awards, 2 Primetime Emmy Awards, an Academy Award, a Tony Award, a Golden Globe Award, and so many other awards. And her life has just been an unbelievable example of starting with nothing, overcoming horrible atrocities when she was a kid, and then defining what is possible through education, through strong self-empowering beliefs. So these people are the best in the world. They weren't born special. They weren't rich. When they started out, they all started with modest means. And how did they do it? They did it with their minds. They had mindsets. They believed in themselves to the point to continuously push forward, and that it was worth it, that they were good enough, that they could. They had different beliefs, purposes, and values. So what are beliefs and how are they formed? So the way I love to share or to think about beliefs is almost view them as a pair of glasses. When you have a belief, it's like putting on a pair of glasses And everything you think about, everything you see, and everything you experience in life is altered by that belief. So beliefs are how we perceive everything in life. And what we believe determines what we think, feel, and do, because it's how we see the world. It's how we interpret the world. So the classic example that most people know is, all right, you have two people looking at a glass of water, and one says it's half empty and the other one says it's half full. But how else could you perceive this glass? How else could you see this? What else could you think about it? How else could you interpret it? Now, based on your beliefs, and the reason most people say half empty, half full is we've been conditioned to believe that those are the only two outcomes for how to look at the glass. But that's not true. So, as other examples of how you could perceive this glass is, let's say you have an engineer, and this is kind of the running joke in the engineering community, but an engineer might look at this glass and say, well, it's inefficient. Either fill it all the way up or cut the glass in half because you have a lot of wasted space in there. So the engineer doesn't even care if it's half full or half empty. He or she sees the glass and goes, it's inefficient. And then on the top right, the example is not sparkling. So the reason I included this was, quick story. So when I was in New York, I went out to dinner with a couple of friends, and one person that was at the table, she had been born and raised with a wealthy background, and whenever she went to restaurants, her family always asked, sparkling or still. And when we were at dinner, I had previously really never heard that, and when the waiter came, she said, well, it's not still, or I'm sorry, it's not sparkling. And that was the first time I realized oh my gosh, what a different way to think about water. It wasn't just yes water or no water. It was, is it sparkling or still? And some people might say, oh, what a bougie background. But the thing is if you grew up the exact same way that she did, with her same experiences, with her same environment, she's a factor of her environment. That's how she was conditioned to believe. That was how she was conditioned to think about water at dinner. So everybody can experience the same objective reality, the same experience, but how we experience it and what it means to us could be entirely different based on our beliefs. So, another example. Imagine two kids who've never been to a roller park or a theme park, a roller coaster park before, and you have two kids who've never been there before, and yet one is so excited to be there and the other one is horrified, terrified. Why? If they've never been to a roller coaster before, why do they have such different reactions? Why do you think? So if you think about their backgrounds, imagine the parents of these two different kids. How would you define the parents? How would you define how these kids grew up? So maybe the one on the left who sees this roller coaster and thinks, this is awesome, I cannot wait, this is going to be unbelievably exciting. Well, maybe that kid grew up in a house where, it's common to climb trees and jump out of trees and do extreme sports. Or maybe his or her parents are thrill-seeking parents and they're adventurous and they always take risks and they promote taking risks. And so when this kid with those life beliefs, who's grown up with that environment, when he or she's presented with this roller coaster, they're projecting those beliefs onto this new experience. And they're seeing this as an incredible, exciting thing. But then on the other side, let's say the other kid grows up in a family that's very risk averse, very protective, very safety oriented. Don't take a lot of risks. Well, that kid's going to be more reserved. And that's going to build a belief system within this kid of, safety over excitement, and always make sure that something is safe. So this kid's going to get to the theme park, see this coaster and go, oh my God, no way. That's horrifying. I'm going to die. There's no way I'm getting on that thing. But there's also other ways that you could perceive the roller coaster. Again, based on what your beliefs are. So let's say that you have someone who's very cost conscious or someone who's pinching pennies and they're very hesitant to spend money on entertainment. Well, someone like this isn't going to the first thought that's going to cross their mind is not going to be whether it's fun or not fun. The very first thing they're going to ask is, how much does it cost? And then on the opposite side, let's say you have a mother or father who has kids, and the very first thing that they think about when they see a roller coaster is it safe? So again, the roller coaster did not change. It's the same objective reality, but how people are perceiving it is different. How they're experiencing it is different, and they're experiencing it differently because of their beliefs. So we all experience life, our reality, entirely differently because we have different belief systems. So something that happens for everyone sees something happen, or everyone is in a similar situation. How people experience that situation is entirely different because of their belief systems. But what happens if we don't have a belief? So, as an example and kind of a thought exercise is, pretend that you've never seen one of these things before. You don't know what it is. You've never seen it, operated it, heard about it, anything. And how would you learn about it? How would you think about figuring out what to use this thing for, what it is, how it works? Well, our mind, because we don't have a belief about it, it immediately starts asking questions. And through asking questions internally, we're trying to figure out how to use this thing. So maybe you'll ask, all right, what's it used for? How does it work? Maybe you'll start turning some of the buttons and grabbing it and opening it and seeing what happens. Well, if you turn it on, and let's say you touch it and burn yourself, well, boom, immediately you're going to have a belief that, all right, that hurts, don't do it again. And that's how we learn. So we form beliefs by asking questions or by learning through personal experience, by other people, or through education. So another example I'd love to give is, let's pretend that you were born in a room and you're in this room from the time you're born until you're 22 years old, and you never leave the room. Well, your beliefs about climate, about environment, is going to be only that room. So when you, let's say you're 22 years old, you leave the room for the first time. And let's say that the temperature inside of the room was 75 degrees. Now you don't know that because you only know the room is that temperature. Now when you walk outside, let's say it's 45 degrees. How would you describe the temperature? So if you said it was cold, how would you know it was cold? How could you know it's cold if you don't know what hot is, if you don't know what warm is? If you were to grow up in a room from 0 to 22 and then walk out, all you'd know is it's different. This is different. I don't like it. It's uncomfortable. And that's because you wouldn't have a belief about hot versus cold or warm versus cold. So that's the reason why we have yin and yang. That's the reason why that's constantly promoted, is our mind needs contrast. We always, in order for our minds to understand something, we have to have contrast. In order to know what's good, we have to know what's bad. In order to know what's just, we have to know what's not just. In order to know hot, we have to know cold. In order to know fast, we have to know slow. Everything is relative, and that's how our mind works. So we need previous references, and we also need contrast for us to believe something about something. So we begin acquiring beliefs when we're born. The moment we're born, we start processing, and our mind starts trying to make sense of the world. Now, the important thing is when we're born, we don't have any prior beliefs. We don't have any prior references. And because of that, we have no contrast. We don't know any better. So our mind starts absorbing and absorbing and absorbing, which means that we condition the beliefs into ourselves that we learn from our family, our friends, our coaches, our teachers, our communities, TV, social media, books, anything that's within our environment. From the time that we're born, that's what we're learning, because we don't know any better. We're absorbing like a sponge all of the beliefs of everyone and everything around us. So as a super simple example, if I told you that the sky was green, would you believe me? Probably not. Why? Because from the time you're born, you've looked up and you've seen a blue sky. All of your friends have told you the sky's blue. Your parents have told you the sky's blue. Your teachers have told you the sky's blue. Every book you've read has described a blue sky. Every painting you've seen has had a blue sky. You have so many references and so many examples telling you that the sky is blue, that is conditioned into you over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, the fact that the sky is blue. And so because of that, you deeply and subconsciously no longer even question it. You believe the sky is blue and you're certain of it. So that means that beliefs are formed in 3 ways: through personal experiences, through shared beliefs from trusted sources. So think of this as, if you trust your parents, you usually learn from them when you're a kid. If you trust your teachers, you usually learn from them. If you trust your coaches growing up, you usually learn from them because you don't know any better, but you trust them. So you absorb and learn their beliefs. And then the third one is learned knowledge, which is education. Reading books, experiencing and learning from people who may have lived 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, or learning from people who wrote books 50 years ago or 100 years ago. So the first 2 are environmental. We grow up experiencing these first 2 forms of learning beliefs through personal experiences and through the people around us, our environment around us. And the third is through our education. So beliefs are created, conditioned, and strengthened both consciously and subconsciously. So again, let's pretend that you have this thing or idea that you've never seen before. You don't even know what to think about it. Well, you're going to come into contact with this thing or learn about this thing, and the first thing you need to do, or that your mind will subconsciously do, is, what should I believe about this thing? I've never seen this thing before. Well, your mind instantly tries doing 3 things to figure out what to believe about it. And you're going to first ask yourself, do I have any experience with this thing or idea? Any personal experiences with this thing or idea? The second thing you're going to be doing is, does someone I know, have they told me what to believe about this thing? So have my parents, a coach, or teachers, professors, or friends, have they told me what to believe? And then the third is, what do I know about this thing or idea that I've learned through education, through reading, or through attending a seminar, or some other way of educating yourself about this thing or idea? And then what your mind does is it just then takes these 3 sources and determines what to believe. And that's how you determine core beliefs for your life. So when you first experience something, you're not fully committed to it. It's kind of like a first impression. When you first meet somebody, when you first learn something, you're not exactly sold. You're still trying to make sense of it. And that's where you say, I think something. But over time, as you have more and more exposures to something, you begin to actually believe something. And then as you have many exposures to something, you definitely believe something. And these 3 are still conscious. These are where if someone says, do you believe something? You would say, yeah, I believe, or I definitely believe. But eventually you get to a point where something is so conditioned into you, it's so deeply embedded in your mind, and you've had so many confirming references, so many experiences telling you that yes, this is true, or no, this is not true, that it's become a core operating belief. And a core operating belief means that it is, people are, life is, I am. You no longer question these things. And in fact, you don't even think about them. And because you don't even think about them, these become embedded assumptions or beliefs that you then live on and make decisions on. And your entire life begins to be formed and shaped by these underlying subconscious beliefs. So another example or another metaphor for what this might look like is, imagine a seed. And the seed is the very first time you experience something or learn about something, and you start to form a belief about it. Well, then you have more references, and it starts to get a little more deeply embedded within you, in your mind. And then you have a lot more references, and you've got a lot more roots in there. And where you are today in your life right now, you have 20 years of deeply rooted, conditioned beliefs. These are core operating beliefs. These are things you don't even think about anymore. Religion, politics, work, money, love, culture, family, friends, power. All these ideas, these concepts, you have beliefs about them. Your future. And the thing is when was the last time you checked them? When was the last time you said, are these true? Are these good? Are these serving me? And maybe you have 30 years of references or 40 years of references. I've worked with people in their 50s, and when they saw this, they said, wow, I've been living with the same beliefs since I was a kid. And they haven't ever taken the time to check their beliefs and ask, are some of these beliefs serving me or are they limiting me? So you have thousands of deep-rooted beliefs about everything from family to friends, relationships, work, money, politics, love, culture, religion, and so many more. And your brain is referencing these belief systems, these deeply embedded core operating beliefs, to understand, interpret, and experience your world. So your belief system, therefore, controls all of your thoughts, feelings, and actions. And I love to use the example that your brain works so similarly to a computer. So think of a computer as you have cache and then you have the hard drive. So the cache is like short-term memory for a computer, but the hard drive is long-term saved down memory. Imagine trying to write a Word document and you write, and then there's no hard drive and you save and then just poof, it's gone and then it just disappears. Well, you would have to constantly recreate that Word document and rewrite everything over and over and over and over and over again. So a computer is pretty much useless without a hard drive, without any way of saving whatever's done. Your brain is the exact same way. So we have sensory organs, which are seeing, hearing, tasting, feeling, and smelling. And the reason we have those is we extract information from the objective world, from the real world. And then our brain then takes that information, interprets it, and that's our perception of the real world. That's the only way that we can make sense of the world. And as an example is, so Helen Keller, most people are aware that she was dumb, deaf, and blind. So she couldn't talk, she couldn't hear, and she couldn't see. So 3 of her main sensory organs didn't work. And in her memoir, when she talks about how hard it was to learn, to understand the world, to grow, she said that she could understand the physical world because she could take her hand and touch a tree. And she could understand the tree because she could touch it. But she said, and again, these are her words, but she said growing up, the hardest part of her education was understanding mental concepts that she couldn't touch. So love, what is love? What is religion? What is politics? What is power? These concepts, because she couldn't physically touch them, and no one could talk to her because she couldn't hear, like for her to experience that and understand that and perceive that was extremely difficult. And it wasn't until she actually had her teacher, who was then able to do sign language and communicate with her in her palm, and actually physically communicate with her hand. That was how she started to improve her education and learn about these concepts, these abstract concepts. So our brain must have prior references to draw on. It must have a belief system in order to understand the world. And as you're out and about during the day, so you wake up, you then experience a day, your brain pretty much has a short-term memory, a cache. And then when you sleep, your mind is then taking these short-term memories or experiences for that day and consolidating them and pretty much transforming them into long-term memory. And those are turned into belief systems. So core beliefs are subconscious, and our brain is always referencing and pulling from these deeply embedded core beliefs in order to experience, think, decide, and act in the world. So because of that, every human being has a cognitive biases, and cognitive biases are a systematic pattern of deviation from norm or rationality and judgment. Individuals create their own subjective reality from their perception of the input, and individuals' construction of reality, not the objective input, may dictate their behavior in the world. All that means is whatever our beliefs are, however our references are stored in our brain, we're going to make decisions based on our own beliefs. And our beliefs are nothing more than references that have been conditioned into us from our past, usually as kids, between the ages of, when we're born to 18 years old. That's when we're most forming our brains and most forming memories and our beliefs and our values and all these other important things. So then we have a second type of bias, which is a form of a cognitive bias called confirmation bias, which means that people hate being wrong. People don't like being proven wrong, because when you're proved wrong, or someone shows that you're wrong, all of a sudden your mind doesn't know what to think anymore. And people don't like being confused. And so because of that, our mind will always, consciously and subconsciously, look for information that supports our beliefs. And I think the most obvious example that most people are aware of is political. Most people grow up with beliefs and absorbing the beliefs of their parents. Why? Because that's their environmental conditioning. Well, then they have these deeply embedded beliefs, and they're going to look, they could watch, and studies have been done where they take two people of opposing political parties, put them in front of a TV show or a debate, and both people walk away with very different beliefs about how the debate went. And it's because people are only listening for what will support their ideas. And that's human nature. And we do that all over the place. We do that in our careers. We do that in our relationships. We do that everywhere because we're biased in doing so. And it's important to understand that that's how we operate. That's how our families operate, our friends operate. So our lives are entirely determined by our beliefs, and especially our core operating subconscious beliefs that have been conditioned into us after 10, 15, 20 years. So there are two very different types of beliefs. There's limiting beliefs and there's empowering beliefs. And depending on the beliefs that we have, whether limiting or empowering, massively influences our lives and our careers and our futures and how we perceive the world. So examples of limiting beliefs are: I am average, unlucky, slow, stuck, not smart, unattractive, big boned, not funny, not outgoing, timid, I'm a loser, unworthy, alone, unsuccessful, unable, under-resourced, hopeless, incompetent, a fraud, poor, unintelligent, all very, very negative beliefs. And there's a lot of people who have horrible beliefs about themselves. And it usually comes from them being picked on, or them being bullied, or them being abused as a kid. And these things stick with them long term, even as adults. And then more limiting beliefs about life. So life is unfair, cruel, purposeless, biased, rigged, limited, unchangeable, out of my control, stressful, hurtful, risky, bad, conspiring against me, unbeatable. And there's a lot of people who believe that life is out of their control and that they're just a victim. And they're a victim of all these horrible atrocities in the world, and there's nothing they can do. Their mind turns off because that's such a limiting belief, and they feel so disempowered that, why try? Why try to figure out a solution? There is no solution. So their mind turns off because of this limiting belief. And then people. So people are unfriendly, greedy, selfish, sinister, hurtful, judgmental, stupid, unhelpful, wasteful, bad, uncaring, and cold-hearted. All of these I am, life is, people are, these types of limiting beliefs, and I'm just using these three as examples. We have limiting beliefs or empowering beliefs about every different type of topic: money, power, religion, relationships, everything. So, and then as examples for empowering beliefs. So I am unique, I'm powerful, I'm smart, I'm personable, I'm handsome, I'm persuasive, I'm exciting, I'm thoughtful, I'm caring, I'm honest, I'm loyal, I'm friendly, confident, capable, competent, successful, blessed, lucky, unstoppable, unlimited. Life is addictive, compelling, adventurous, fun, exciting, stimulating, challenging. Life is worthwhile. It's opportunistic. It's negotiable. It's in my control. It's surprising. It's pleasant. It's a game. It's entertaining. It's mysterious. And it's wondrous. People are friendly, caring, helpful, warm, loving, open-minded, good, charitable, just, creative, smart, approachable, hopeful, communal, thankful, worthy, special. And so when you think about these different beliefs, and these are choices, you can choose a belief. A belief is nothing more than your choice. And that's the tough part about beliefs too. There's no right or wrong answer. And you can't prove whether a belief is right or wrong, because you can prove both sides in most cases. So it's a choice. We need to destroy limiting beliefs and choose to live by empowering beliefs. And it's so important because you can look at, imagine that there's two people and one person lives with the beliefs on the left in red. They live their life based on these limiting beliefs, the I am life as people are. And then you have another person who lives their life based on the empowering beliefs on the right. How massively different will these two people's lives be? Over a year, over 3 years, over 5 years, 10 years. Imagine the difference in their lives over 30 to 50 years. It's night and day. That's the importance of beliefs. So think of a belief as blank is blank or blank are blank. So just as an example that we all have deeply embedded beliefs within us that we need to check, that we need to figure out, are these really true? Are they serving us or are they limiting us? So for example, name the first thing that comes to your mind when I show you this. Money is what? So for some people, first thing that comes to mind is money is bad. Money is greed. Money is some negative thing. But what if I were to challenge your belief and say, well, are there not people who are using money for good? Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Tony Robbins has been able to feed now almost 1 billion people with money. What about all the people who are creating donations and investing in clean water for people in Africa, or child foundations, or overcoming the horrible atrocities of childhood slavery? Money is required for all that. Capital is required for all that. And so beliefs about money can be both good and bad. Money really is nothing more than a tool that can be used for good or bad. So money is a tool. But then you have other beliefs. Work is what? What's the first word that comes to your mind for work? What about taxes? Taxes are what? A lot of people believe taxes are horrible. I want to pay as few taxes as possible. The government's greedy. But again, what if you were to challenge those beliefs and say, well, what's the benefit of living in America? We have freedom. Most of us take freedom for granted. Most of us have never experienced living in a country without freedom. And in order to have a free democracy run well, we have to have capital in the government in order to run that, in order to invest in sidewalks. I mean, if we didn't have taxes, we'd be riding our bikes and walking in puddles of mud. And we wouldn't have highways. We wouldn't be able to drive across the country. All these things are funded through taxes. And so it's almost like our lives right now, our standard of living now, what we have now is because of taxes. Now, of course, the debate is how much should we be paying in taxes? And that's always going to be a debate. But the way that we could think about taxes is taxes, it's really, we're feeding the goose that lays the golden eggs. If America is the land of the free, where we can start companies or make free will decisions, we don't have to be indentured servants to a company. We choose our careers. We choose our lives. Well, if taxes is the food that's feeding that goose, it may be a fat goose, as Jim Rohn said, but maybe a fat goose, but it's better than no goose. So taxes it could be viewed as good or bad. And then what about this? Companies. Companies are what? Again, people have very different beliefs about companies are good, companies are bad. And then our economy is. First thing that comes to your mind is what? Our economy is what? All right. Our government is what? First thing that comes to your mind. Our president is what? First thing that comes to your mind. Wealthy people are what? First thing that comes to your mind. Now this next one is also going to bring out a lot of beliefs. My future is what? What's the first word that comes to your mind about your future? All of these different examples, there's no right or wrong. And the thing is the only reason that we respond or react to these different phrases is based on our deeply embedded core beliefs. That they're subconscious now, and now we're making decisions based on them. So, references from our past create our beliefs, condition our beliefs, and our beliefs are what create our future. So again, at the very top, our purpose, our beliefs, and our values determines our mindset. And our mindset will determine what we focus on and what we think about, as well as what the thing that we're actually focusing and thinking about means to us. And then what something means to us is going to determine our emotions. And in order to actually logically think through something or rationalize through something, we have to focus on it and think about it. So our emotions and our logic will then influence our decisions, our behavior, and our actions. And our behavior and our actions over a long period of time determines our performance and our results, determines our lives. So, why do most people never achieve their dreams and finish life with regrets? And there have been many, many books written where people who are working within hospice care. So hospice care is usually where people who have chronic health conditions and are most likely going to be dying in the next 1 to 3 months or in a short-term period of time. These people are the caretakers, making sure that it's an easy passing. Now, a lot of the people in those positions have done interviews with people laying on their deathbed and asked them, what do you regret? Or what has made you feel guilty? Or what were the best moments in your life? What do you appreciate the most in life? And they've written books on these, and what they found is people often regret not believing in themselves. And most people finish life realizing that they should have believed in themselves and they should have taken more risk. They should have pursued their unrealistic dreams. And the reason I have unrealistic in quotes is because whether something is realistic or unrealistic is entirely based on your beliefs. If you go to somebody and ask them, just a random person on the street, and you ask them, hey, is it possible to build a multi-million-dollar company or to become a millionaire? A lot of people would say no, because they themselves have not achieved it, and so they themselves don't believe it's possible. But if you talk to somebody who has built a multi-million-dollar company or has built a multi-million-dollar fortune or net worth, and you ask them, is that possible? They would say, absolutely. Let me share with you how I did it. Realistic or unrealistic is entirely based on your beliefs. And so a lot of the people who are dying with regrets on their deathbed, they realize that somewhere along the road in their lives, somebody limited their beliefs. Somebody told them, you can't do that. That's impossible. Less than 1% of people ever achieve that. You don't have enough talent. You're not gifted. Stop dreaming. Or money is the root of all evil. Successful people are greedy and selfish. Just be thankful for what you have. That last one, it sounds like a good phrase. But the thing is it's actually limiting, because it's encouraging you to just be thankful and not pursue more. Now, you should always be thankful and always be grateful and always be appreciative. And again, they've done studies that most successful people become successful through humility, through being grateful for what they have. And because of that, they're also a lot more sharing. But why don't most people become professional singers? Because when most people are little, someone says, stop singing, you suck, you're horrible. And so immediately people learn, all right, I'm not a singer, I'm done. But the people who do become professional singers usually have parents or friends or other people that encourage them and said, you're getting better. You're good, keep going. They're the ones who continuously pursue the dream and develop themselves. So the most important thing is that how do successful people become successful? They do it because they have empowering core operating beliefs, subconscious beliefs that lead them to maximize their resources and opportunities. And importantly, because of their beliefs, they do not view failure as a one-time horrible outcome that limits their life. Instead, they view failure as a learning opportunity. They focus on personal development early in life, and then through personal development, as we talked about in Module 1, Part 3, Strategic Growth, they continuously compound their personal value and abilities over time and yields incredible levels of success. So successful people start with mindset. They start with very strong, empowering beliefs, and that mindset then leads them to focus on personal development, because in their mind, they're thinking, I can do it. I am good enough. I am worthy. I am getting better. I will learn from failure. So first is the mindset, and that mindset encourages them and motivates them to focus on the personal development. Through that personal development, their skills, their knowledge, and their experiences continuously compounds over time, and they get better. Their skills improve, their knowledge improves, their personal ability, their value improves. And then on top of that, they're testing it continuously. There's an opportunity, they try, they fail. Another opportunity, they try, they fail. But again, because of their strong mindset and their beliefs, they do not view failure as a one-time outcome. They do not view it as a dead end in the road. Instead, they view it as feedback. They take it, they looked at it, and they said, well, what could have gone better? How can I learn from this experience? What do I need to focus on in the future in order to make sure that this doesn't happen again? So mindset, personal development, and then as they continuously improve themselves, they try over and over and over again. Opportunity, failure, opportunity, failure, opportunity, failure, opportunity, failure, until eventually, boom, there's a breakthrough and they have a success. And at that point, they've confirmed all of their work, all their mindset, and that's when people reach unbelievable heights in their life. That's when people become unlimited in their mindsets. When they hit that point where it works, the product works, they win a championship, or they win a game, or they get promoted, or they get the job, or they lost the 30 pounds and they hit that point. Like when someone hits that point of success, the confirmation that happens in their belief systems, it's like the skies open up and the world becomes unlimited for them. And that is what makes the most successful people in the world successful. This is what their early life looked like, their early career looked like. And from that point on, after they have that success, they go on to have more success, more success, more success, and they pursue eventually their greatest potential. And they're the ones who break limits, break boundaries in all industries, political, business, sports, religion, anything, any different area, arts and humanities, music. So how to achieve your greatest potential? First, it has to start with you understanding how are you currently programmed. How are you conditioned from your childhood, from all of the experiences you've had in life so far? You have deeply embedded core beliefs that you need to understand. And then once you understand how you're currently wired, how you currently have belief systems, you need to figure out what limiting beliefs do I have and destroy them and replace them with strong, empowering beliefs. And then once you've chosen your empowering beliefs, because again, beliefs are a choice. There's no right or wrong. You can choose what you choose to believe in. And then once you choose an empowering belief, you're going to condition that new empowering belief again and again and again every day until it becomes a core operating belief. So never forget this. If you do not believe something can happen, it will never happen. Your mind turns off because you don't believe it's possible. So how do we destroy and replace a limiting belief? There's really 5 steps. So one is first you need to expose the roots, expose the limiting belief, understand what is currently holding me back. Once you understand exactly what that belief is, you need to pull it out, disprove it, and also ask yourself, is this true? Is this, how do I know that this is true? And if I choose to continue to believe this negative belief, how is that going to impact the rest of my life? Where will my life be in 5 years if I continuously believe this negative thing, this negative concept about me or life or my career or my abilities? So after you've done that, you then need to choose what am I going to choose to believe instead? And this is you choosing an empowering belief, which is going to replace it. And then ask, well, how will my life turn out if I choose to believe and live by this new empowering belief? What will my life look like in 5 years if I choose to believe this? What will my life look like in 10 years if I choose to believe this? Even 12 months. Where will I be in 12 months if I choose to believe this? And then ask yourself, all right, well, step 4, establish new references. What examples from my past or who else can I look to that proves that this new belief is true? And most people, as an example of a very deeply rooted negative belief that a lot of people have is, I'm not smart. or I'm not good enough. Well, where did that come from? So step one is understanding, where did that come from? Did it come from failure in childhood where you got negative grade or really bad grades or something, or you were cut from a team, or something bad happened to you in the past? And then you want to disprove it by saying, well, are there not times where in my life I've done something really awesome? I did do something really intelligent, or I did use my brain in a way that shocked me and I was like, wow, I'm capable of that. So you disprove it by using examples where the opposite was true. And then replace it by saying, I am choosing from here on out, I am smart, I am intelligent, I am worthy, I am good enough, I'm great at math, I'm great at science. These types of beliefs are choices. And by asking yourself, all right, well, if I choose to believe this going forward, what would I do differently? How will my life turn out in the next 12 months or 5 years or 10 years if I choose to believe this? And then ask yourself, all right, well, what examples from my past do I have where I was pretty good with numbers, or I did prove myself as very smart? That's going to be building new references, and then condition the belief and continually prove to yourself over time going forward in the future that this is true. So this is where by having this new belief, it will change your decisions and your actions, because what you believe is going to determine what you focus on and think about. Well, if you're focusing on proving to yourself that I am good, I am smart, you're going to start doing things that someone who believes they're smart would do. You're going to start reading more books, and that's going to change the outcome of your life over time. So what I want to show you here is the worksheet that you're going to be working through to dive into and understand these limiting beliefs and empowering beliefs. So you can see here that I've laid out questions for you to deeply think through. And these are not easy questions to think through. And take time on this because it's so important. So, for example, 1, what negative beliefs or stories do you have about what you are capable of achieving? What negative beliefs or stories do you have about your future? What negative beliefs or stories do you have about your ability to improve your life situation? What negative memories, experiences, or stories have conditioned you to be who you are today, where you are now, and are holding you back from achieving your life's maximum potential? What self-identity are you attached to, which is limiting your ability to change, grow, take risk, be free of other people's judgment, and do what you really want in life? Which people in your life are you afraid of upsetting or disappointing? And because of that, you've made life decisions based on pleasing those people instead of pursuing what you truly want for yourself. What negative habits or addictions do you have that are holding you back from achieving your maximum potential? What negative beliefs or stories do you have about what other people think about you? And this is a really deep one for a lot of people. A lot of people believe that they're negatively judged by everyone, their family, their friends, etc. So what negative beliefs or stories do you have that drain you of self-confidence and having a powerful presence, of being confident in yourself? What negative beliefs or stories do you have about personal development? What negative beliefs or stories do you have about your intelligence or your ability to learn new things? What negative beliefs or stories do you have about your body, your health, your fitness, your attractiveness? What negative beliefs, feelings, or stories do you have about your work and about your career? What negative beliefs or stories do you have about money, wealth, and financial abundance? What negative beliefs or stories do you have about your ability to be creative, to problem solve, to make decisions, and to be a leader of other people? And what are you afraid of? What fears are restricting your life, your happiness, and your ability to achieve your greatest potential? So these are all going to dive into the deeply embedded limiting beliefs that you have in your life based on other experiences that you've had previously in your life. Usually a lot of these will stem from childhood. Something horrible happened when you were 10 or 14, and whether you know it or not, it was so painful in that moment that you never wanted to experience it again. And because of that, you consciously or subconsciously made decisions after that point to never experience it again. And so as an example, someone who says, well, I'm really shy. And I'm like, well, were you born shy? And they say, well, no. And I say, all right, well, when did you choose to become shy? When did you start to believe that you were shy? And usually what happens is when someone is really young, something happens publicly where they look, maybe they say something and they're laughed at by everyone in the class. Or they say something that embarrasses them or humiliates them horribly, and it was so painful that they decided in that moment when they were 10 years old, it is less painful to keep my mouth shut and be quiet than it is to voice my opinion and be laughed at, or potentially be laughed at. And so from that point on, that kid becomes quiet. They don't share their thoughts. They stay quiet. So it's really, really important to dive into these deeply embedded negative beliefs or limiting beliefs. So, empowering beliefs. These are where you're going to choose from here on out, what am I going to choose to believe for myself, my future, my life? And these are what you will be conditioning, and we'll talk about that on Module 4. So, what will you choose to believe is true for your career? What will you choose to believe is true for your life? What will you choose to believe is true for your personality? What will you choose to believe is true for your health and fitness and attractiveness? What will you choose to believe is true for your relationships? What will you choose to believe is true for your performance and your success? What will you choose to believe is true for what others think and say about you? And what will you choose to believe is true for your ability to make an impact? So you'll be working through this worksheet, and that's it for Module 2, Part 1. And in Part 2, we're going to be diving into values and understanding values and value hierarchies and how they massively affect the decisions that you make in your life. So I'll see you in there.